So how many kids you got?
7.
7.
7.
What's the oldest?
Oldest is 20, almost 22.
They're always kids, aren't they?
What's
Doesn't
that?
matter what age they are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
The kids. The littlest one?
6.
6. What grade's he in?
First.
You got a lot of... I got 2 and 4.
2 and 4, yep.
And 4 days ago, I had this realization that I got to prepare for kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to get into a whole new level of adulthood. I don't know if I'm ready for. You want to hire employees? You want me to work anywhere in the country? I'm game. Now I'm like, I got to sign my kid up and get them ready for school.
Are you ready for this?
No, I'm not. I'm going to have to watch a YouTube on how this works.
How to register for school. So, yeah, it is an interesting thing as your kids grow, right? That the more and more you have to plan for things.
Okay.
Right. So it's been a fun experience seeing, our age brackets are huge. Right. So we've had to kind of go through things multiple times where, the age bracket for one of our middles, Anthony, is pretty large to Vinny as well. And so there was a big 6-year gap there too. So like when you think about it, you're like, man, you think you're done with kids and then boop, here's another one. And then, and 6 years later, another one. It's like, I'm always going to have a kid. So like, I don't get out of, he'll be 18 and I'll be like 65.
We're not thinking that.
It's amazing.
When you had them.
No, not at all. I'm just going to be a grandpa at some point. And yeah, I'll still have an 18-year-old. So there you go. But that's not what we're talking about.
No, but we're talking about like, parenting them, how the potential inside of them, stewarding their vision, their dreams, and of course the dreaded I know. They all know.
Yeah, they
all know everything.
Yes. Yep. So this episode is really about parenting to a kid's potential.
Right.
Right. And so, we all have heard the verse. It's Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way and when he's old, he'll never part from it.
Right.
Right. And when we think of that, we're thinking like, I'm just supposed to give this kid all the Bible that he can get. Right. That's what we think of when we're talking about train up a child, right? It's like, I'm just going to give this kid as much Bible, as much Jesus as I possibly can give him. And that's not what this verse is talking about. It's interesting when you break this verse down and look at like what this is really saying, that it's really to train up a kid in the way that he or she is going.
Okay.
Right? So it's to train them up in their God-given gifts and God-given abilities and train them in those things so that when they're old, right, they can grow into those things and not depart from what they were given as a child from the Lord.
And I think we're getting into a huge topic that's rarely discussed, is that from birth, we love to quote the Jeremiah, was it 29:11?
Right.
For God has the plans for me.
Yeah.
Like, do we ever take into account that every gift is already inside of us? Yet the second they graduate, basically high school, we're not telling them what they should do with their life. We're not going back to the Lord saying like, what gifts were put inside of me? What haven't I discovered yet? What should I double down or walk away from?
Right.
And we kind of think like, well, let's find the best paying job. And as a parent, I'm sure the junior high, or you would probably be able to say there's a time and season they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
You're just trying not to let them break the house. But then you can start to see, they definitely have a gift in this.
Right. So and we kind of came up with this because I've been dealing with one of my kids a lot lately, who's 13, and his in school is hard for him.
Right.
Right. Not in the sense of like the textbooks, the learning, all of that, straight A's across the board. He is too smart for his own good. Right. And therefore he's bored when it comes to schooling. Right. So he, when he says, I know, it's like, well, he probably probably actually does know. He's done
Right.
research on so many things. It's like this kid's brain is like, and it's so like, how do you train this kid, right, into something that he wants to be and develop into something he wants to be, and pour into the potential that's inside of him, right? And so what has happened in the course of time is that he's developed this passion for music, right, and like rap, and it was funny because he wanted to be a rapper, right? And so a few years ago he comes out with his first album ever, right? Super excited, and this kid does this all by himself, like creates the music, like writes the songs, raps them out, and so he comes up with this whole concept for an album and calls it Not a Rapper, and it's like, this is what you are. And so if you listen to his album, he had this whole creative process. Well, I'm not just a rapper, I'm a Christian rapper. And that's where you land at the end of the whole album, is that he's a Christian rapper, right? And so, and this is his creative mind.
Right.
So like, how do I take that kid, right, who is like getting straight A's in school, but yeah, he's got a little problem with some teachers because he's bored and does stupid things, and pour into him the giftings that he has, and like, you know, pour water on it to keep it growing. And it's that's what we're dealing with at this season in life.
It starts at, I think, an early age. We can just be unaware of it in today's society with cell phones, pressure of life, busyness. So my oldest does not like to pick up toys. Like, I'm pleading with him before we get out another box of toys, put the other ones away. But Saturday I had to do some yard work. He got the rake out, and he raked not only my yard, he raked the neighbors, and he's 4. And it's like, if you give him a task that is beyond his ability, super excited.
Yeah.
But if it's a simple, like, I got to pick up my socks, it's like, oh. But if I told him, I need you to move 20 bricks, he'd be all game for it. You might lose a finger in the process, but that's okay. I'm safe.
Right.
No, you're not. But I think it's challenging, because I do think in this coming era, God is going to breathe on the next generation very quickly.
Yeah.
And they're going to move faster than we moved. Are we ready for it? And then how do you steward not only the call of God in their life spiritually, but then the mental side, the career side, relationships? Like, would you say with your daughter getting married, like, that's early in today's standards?
Super. Yeah. I think it's definitely, like, really early. Yeah.
In today's standards, it's like you should be getting married late 28, 30.
20, 30s,
30s
right?
is like the norm.
Yeah. And they were super young, but like, great compatibility. So
but if you rewind it 50 years ago,
it was 14, 15 back then. So like, that's a little,
like, they would have been late to the game.
Right.
And I think it's interesting how times are changing, that I think God's going to bring back early marriages, using young ministers. And we're in a culture right now that's like, no, you should do 8 years of school right after high school.
A long time.
Well, that's what the school system's at least telling them 6. Spend 2 years figuring it out.
Right.
And then do another 4 years.
You ever wonder, like, what happened to the trade schools? Like, to me, it's like,
there's nowhere to find a...
Right. And this is what I'm saying is, like, back in the day, right, kids were trained up in certain things, in certain trades and certain things, that they were gifted in these abilities. That's where we have great electricians, we have great mechanics, we have great plumbers, great AC guys. Like, nowadays, it's like you're struggling to find somebody to do the work because they weren't trained up in the way of the old. And it's like, everybody's trying to DIY it, right? And you can't find a real person that's licensed, insured, and can do these things, because there isn't anybody anymore, because all the trade schools are like basically unheard of, right? And it goes back to this verse, train up a child, right? And when you read the verse, it really should be read like this: train up a child according to his or her way.
Right.
Is that for everybody or for that individual person? Train up a child in his or her way.
Right.
That's not a blanket.
Yeah,
Every kid needs to be trained up this specific way. Right. This is like each kid needs to be trained up specifically for who they are and who God has made them to be.
Well, even in my own life, if it wasn't for my mom taking time to recognize, dude, you have serious learning disabilities, just because you're fooling the school system, and they had to like pull me out, put everything on tape so I could hear it because I couldn't even read it.
Right.
But if you take that verse, I had to be trained a different way to what my abilities were.
Right. So
limitations.
I'll take it to another level because in the it's in the Amplified, right? Amplified Bible, it reads like this: train up a child in the way he should go, and in keeping with his individual gift or bent. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. Right. So you had a specific bend, right? Like you had certain things that like you lean towards, right? And even that entrepreneurial spirit that you have, and but the other side of it is the dyslexia and things that we've talked about many times on other episodes. So when you look at that, you had to be trained a certain way. Right. And she had to take those things, your bent, your individual things that are inside of you, and train you a certain way, right, to become successful. Would you say it worked?
Yeah, I think it worked out great. You know, and I think encouraging the listener, the person watching is, you know, I think it's a twofold situation. It's not a one size fits all. You've got 7 kids.
100%.
Guaranteed you can't parent them.
No, each one is.
You can gather them all in the vehicle,
different.
but even how you get them to the car, I bet you is different.
So like thinking that through is like, man, I teach my 6-year-old way differently than I do my 13-year-old.
Right.
Way differently. There's different, and you know, my 6-year-old struggles with a few things, so he has a certain bend, right? So we're dealing with having to navigate that situation at the moment. Whereas, you know, like I said, the 13-year-old is like, his mind is in another place, like on the brilliant scale. And it's like, how do you do the two of those at the same time? It's each individually training them up to their potential. Right. And their God-given potential is amazing. It's great. God has gifts in each one of them that are unique. Right. And so it's pulling those things that God has given them out and saying, man, let's focus on these things. Right. So that when the time comes, right, and you're of age, you can focus on these things, and what God will do with that is going to be incredible. Right. So like in referring to the 13-year-old with the rap albums, I think it's hilarious because, man, he's writing an album right now. It's third one, right? And he's making all the beats himself this time around. Before it was like, I got to buy a beat. Now he's creating the beats, and they're better than the beats he was buying. And it's like, this kid has grown in the 3 years that he's been doing this to be like, and it's like, well, keep on going, buddy. Keep, you know, and it's pushing him. And it's like, and what I become is like, hey, Dad, listen to this, right? Whereas before is like, I'm going to keep this a secret. I'm not going to let anybody hear it. And then it's like, well, we'll play it in the car just to like tease him because he really doesn't want us to hear it. It's very weird, but he wants it out for the world to hear, but not for the family, right? So, but now it's like, Dad, come, I want you to hear it before. Is there something I should fix? Is this good? Is this good? And it's like training him and pushing him to another level. And now you see that as it's coming out is like, man, you're just starting to pull things out of this kid that wasn't there a year and a half ago. Right. Couldn't write a song to save his life when it came to like the music part. Now he's piano lessons. Now he's learning. It's like pulling that potential out of that kid and showing him, hey, this is something we can push into, you know, if this is the bend that you're taking, right? School, still getting straight A's and B's, but this, man, skyrocketing in another direction.
Well, and I would want to encourage somebody, you know, the world needs the next, whatever that is, you fill in the blank, because, you know, I don't want to leave somebody out, but we as parents can like be intimidated. Like, can we just get them dressed into the next social event without being late? Realizing that there's something inside of them at an early age, and we don't want to stifle their creativity. everything about them from just their personality's already been formed. And a lot of times parents will try. So if anybody knows my kids, they're the loudest kids on the block. Like they're known as, like they've got a running joke, I guess, at the church. Like anytime there's a noise, that's got to be the Z boys because their scream is so loud. But it's like, I don't want to take away the enthusiasm that God's placed in them because there's some reason God's put a loud voice in them.
Right.
And I can see in the coming decade, they're going to be a voice for the quiet ones. Like they'll stand up. They're already very compassionate. But a lot of times we feel awkward as parents when our kids don't fit the status quo.
Right.
And that's really hard for people that are struggling to fit in, is like, it doesn't help when you're just trying to fit in and then you got the one kid who makes you not fit in. Like, I remember we'd be in service and my kid would scream and Alexis could feel all the eyes and nobody's really staring, but it feels like the whole room is staring at you.
Right.
And it can feel awkward. And then you just want everything mundane. You want them, don't do anything too much. Don't cause more problems. Mm-hmm. But those aren't the creative ones. Those aren't the ones that end up changing. It's always the crazy, wild ones. Mm. But at the same time, no matter where you fit on the spectrum, there's a role for you.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we either try to take an introvert, make them extroverted, or calm down that extroverted side.
Right.
We want them to fit in between the levels of 3 and 7.
Yeah.
Don't just be safe. Just play it safe.
It's good. But here's the thing. When each kid has a uniqueness to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like your 2-year-old is way different than your 4-year-old, right? And for me who has 7, each kid is so unique in their thoughts, in how they do things, and how they respond to things, and how they are academically, right? Where the world tries to push us and give us one way to do math, one way to do, this. And each kid is designed so unique that, we have some kids that struggle in school, right? We have some kids that it's the easiest thing for them, right? It's completely unique, right? And it's being able to parent them through those unique situations, right? Where we have one kid struggling to learn how to read, right? Okay, but how do I parent him? We're the kid that can read a book and remember the entire thing, and literally verbatim give it right back to you, the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, he can't, he's still, he can't do that yet. Right. So let him learn this sentence, and it's like, how do you do that? And it's like, so what I find is and we kind of talked about it the last episode, is you parent them differently, right? And I try with each kid to kind of find out where the button is,
right?
So I don't hit that button.
Well, he says that in Proverbs, dads, don't aggravate your children, because you can easily, they get on your nerves, you can almost kind of get them on their nerves to either get away, and you don't want to, there's no need to trigger those moments.
Right. But they love to trigger them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's tough for a parent.
Right.
Because they'll trigger you and you're like, but I can't
right.
respond. Right. And it's like, come on. But knowing each one, right, where it is helpful, so that I can kind of push it to that point to kind of have them be able to grow, because you'll never grow if you're not stretched. Right. It takes a stretching for something to grow. And so you have to push them to that limit, so there's a stretch, and then the growth begins to take place. And we're starting to see that now with our 6-year-old learning how to read, and now it was so difficult 6 months ago, and now the kid's literally reading his Bible at nighttime, and it's man, a couple months ago couldn't get out a sentence. We have him in speech therapy and things like that, right? Because he was struggling super hard with stuff. But now it's you can see this transition happening, and it's the love of reading comes into play, and he just absolutely loves it, and will sit there at nighttime with his action Bible, and he's like, but Dad, I'm reading the Bible. I'm like, I don't care if you're reading the Bible, it's bedtime. You got to shut it at some point, Jesus has had enough of you or something. It's no, he hasn't, but you know what I mean? It's
we have life to live.
That's amazing. Right. To go from not being able to do something. And it was the stretching and learning, having him do difficult things to have that grow and parenting him to his potential. We know that he could read. Right. It was just a struggle. And so now we get it to a different place.
This topic is so hard to label because even in our own office, there's 4 of us guys.
Right.
We all have children.
We do.
We all have unique children. We all have situations. If it's health scenarios, are you having the most? And it's like, the guy behind the camera, he's adding one. So there's all these unknowns, but parenting is the most unknown. Like you don't know what you're getting yourself into till you're in it.
Yeah, and I find, and this is for some parents out there that probably struggle with, am I doing this correctly?
Right.
Because like you never really know if you're doing the right thing, right? Until your kids are older, right?
Well, here's the greatest example. You give your kid to a babysitter.
Right.
They don't listen to the mom and dad for anything. And then they come back and the babysitter's like, you have the most wonderful, I will babysit for you whenever because these are and you're like, they're delightful? Like, they don't act like that for me.
Just jumping off the top rope, right, ready to go, doing elbows on each other.
That's the thing is like, for us, they're pushing our buttons. We're constantly stewarding, but you see how they really are when they are in public, when they're with others, with maybe grandma and grandpa. And it's hard because you don't really have a way to scale. Are we winning? Do we need to advance here? It's very difficult in that vein.
Yeah, and like I was getting at, like you have to wait until they're older to figure out if they've kind of been trained up in the way that they should go. And for people that are out there listening, going, hey, but my kid is different. Yep, you're right. Your kid is 100% different.
Because they all are.
Right? Because each kid is different. So the way you're going to parent your kid is going to be way different than the way I'm parenting mine because each kid is different. So you'll see me talk one way to one kid and one way to another, and you're like, "Why are you so?" Because they're so different.
Right.
Because if I yell at my 16-year-old daughter, that girl will not talk to me for 4 years. Right? She doesn't handle it well. Comes from there's adoption, there's hurts, there's pains and stuff. If I even try to like raise my voice, that just doesn't work at all. I literally have to keep myself at this like level with her for her to even have a conversation with me. And still, sometimes that don't work because there's so many issues that are there. With my 6-year-old, if I don't raise my voice,
he doesn't hear you.
It's like I don't exist.
Right.
It's 4 or 5 times I have to call his name before he'll acknowledge my presence.
Right.
And then the voice, it has to get higher and higher. And then finally he's like, what did you want?
Right.
I'm like, you're right next to me. How are you not hearing this?
I get that.
So that's what we're getting at is they're so different, but you have to train each one up to their potential. And your kids have great potential. Right. Each and every kid, God has given them a unique gift, a unique talent, a unique ability that they're all gifted and they have a potential that they can fulfill.
And I think parents need to hear that if you've made a mistake, you put them into strong of a class or whatever, God has made them resilient. We hear that, but we don't believe it when we're in the mix of it. And God is always bringing his own correction to them. And it's amazing how God brings the right person in their life when it's needed, either a friend or a mentor or whatever. And a lot of times we have this pressure. We just don't want to fail them. We were either failed as individuals. And so we really wanted to encourage you guys. These kids are precious. They're blessings, or don't be afraid to have them. There's a huge segment of people who are like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be a good parent. You know, you will be through the guides of the Holy Spirit and Christ leading us and teaching them the Bible, because we have to always remember we're not perfect. But I think parents try to be, they forget.
Right. I always say this, like, we don't have to be perfect. We have to be present. Right. And like, for me, it's like, I'm not going to be perfect. I fall short for my kids a lot of the times, right? Raise my voice in times when maybe I shouldn't, or act a certain way that maybe I shouldn't. And that's falling short for them, right? Missing the target, right? And so but still I'm here, right? And they need to know I'm here. They need to know that I care for them. They need to know that I'm not leaving. I'm not going, and like I'm present, right? And I think for a lot of people, it's the people that aren't present that they struggle the most, that their parents aren't there, right?
Right.
And so they have a hard time dealing with life situations and things like that. And there's a struggle. And maybe that kid is going to have a harder time fulfilling the potential that they have because they don't have the people in their life that they should.
Right.
So it's really being present for your child and showing them, hey, this is how you can fulfill the gift and calling that
So I
God
want to kind of
has for you. Yep.
take it like kind of sideways. So we
Here
talked
we go.
about like young kids.
Mhm.
So you being a pastor,
Yes.
me being youth pastor for whiles in different places around the country. If you're an individual and you've got older kids, they're probably like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like I lost that window of time. Like now they don't want to talk to me. They hate me, or they're just, cold. I've always told people, extend the olive branch.
Right.
And it can come through many different ways. Even when it's like closed doors, I've always recommended write a letter. Because letters, you can't talk back to a letter.
Right.
If you give a heartfelt, I love you, forgive me, I'm sorry, whatever, and don't look for the response back.
Right.
See what God can do with it. But
That's
like
good.
as a pastor, why don't you help some people who are like, you don't understand. I didn't know Christ when I had my little one. I got a divorce. Whatever. And now they're adults. They're still children craving mom and dad
Right.
in their life. And a lot of times we let cold hardness kind of like
Right.
keep us away. And that's the enemy keeping us from the bond. So that's my thing is I would really challenge you, never shut the door to the relationship with any child. Doesn't matter what age. Write a letter, send a care package. There's something about getting a gift that is like, it brings joy to one that they weren't expecting it. So do you have
Right.
anything to add?
Yeah, so I would say this, like a lot of people think like it's a parent's responsibility to save their child, right? Like when you think about like, man, I want to raise my child up in the way that they should go, right? They think that the responsibility of the parent is to save the child. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to bring that child to a relationship with the Father, right? So if you have geared your child to that relationship, it's up to them to receive the salvation that has been provided by the Lord, right? We can't save our kids.
Right.
That's not our responsibility is not that. All we can do is show them, right? It's like bringing what's the saying? You can bring a horse
to water.
to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
Right. It's the same for our kids, is that we can bring them to church. We can bring them every single to Bible studies. We can bring them to Sunday school. We can bring them Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays. But if they're not drinking it, they're not receiving it. Right. And I can't force feed my kid to receive Christ. Right. All I can do is show them what it's like to live a life as a Christian. So if you've been in that situation where, man, you haven't brought your kids to church and those kinds of things, it's okay. Now's your chance to show your child what it looks like to love like Christ and be like Christ, and therefore then draw them to Christ. And that's how you can do that. It's not your job to save them. It's your job to show them what Christ looks like. And so I think when you get the mentality out of your head, man, I can't save my kids, only Jesus can. All I can do is show them Jesus.
Right.
So
that's good. Well, we want to encourage you guys. We wanted to thank you guys for listening, watching. Don't forget to like, share this. But, this was a topic on Vinny's heart. My heart is that, there's so much potential inside of your child, especially inside of you. But understanding that we're not perfect. We're not going to know everything that happens every moment, but through the works of the Holy Spirit, led by Christ, that we can lead them the way God designed them.
Yeah.
Because God put purpose in them. God put creativity in them, all their talents already in them. It's just kind of our job to help discover and then let them even find it and then use it. And we're just kind of like, buffer. So I want to pray for you guys. And I just want to tell you, you're doing a good job. Very few people get to hear you're doing a good job. And you know what? Don't compare yourself. Don't look at your neighbors. Don't look at the people at church, because we don't know the struggles they're in. We don't know the situations they're in. Everybody is unique. Coming from a family that's, white, Hispanic, learning disabilities, moving, even when you move from geographical areas, people parent different, live different. Don't compare. That's the worst thing. That's the enemy's job, is delighting and being like, oh man, they're getting it and you're just barely getting by. Your kid's going to just end up like you. That's not true. God has big plans for your children. So I'm going to pray for you real quick. I just pray right now, Lord, for everybody watching and listening, Father, that you would just strengthen them. You would bring peace to them, God. And if anything needs to be added into their parenting, into their developing their children, God, you would show them through a dream, God. You would bring them the right people in the structure that is needed for that situation, Lord, that there is no one-size-fits-all parenting, teaching mechanism. God has created so many different avenues. So in that, what is needed, Lord, I pray that they would cry out, ask out, that they would be shown what is needed to help steward that child to go in the way that you've seen, the way you've designed them to be, and that bring them peace, Lord. If there's any question and anybody's listening in their hearts, am I doing a good job, Lord? Answer that question, Lord. Show them what it can be. Show them what it is. But Lord, give them peace. Let them know by the presence of the Holy Spirit that they are doing a good job, that they are attempting. And that's what you're asking from us. You didn't say win. You didn't say, well, if you're losing, you just said we need to. And so I thank every parent that is and doing their job, Lord. I get that this time is stressful as we're in the holiday season, that we don't feel like we are providing enough. We don't have the right presents. We don't have all the stuff that the world tells us that, you know what, love and a hug and I love you will go farther than any present that ever could imagine. So I just want to encourage you. I want to bless you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.